I was already out of high school. I graduated high school a year early. And I had recently sort of discovered this side of myself, sexually speaking, that I wanted to tap into more. And so I thought about porn and I said, well, this is a place where I can explore these fantasies.
What's up, guys? Today, my guest is one of the coolest people on the internet, Sasha Grey. Many of you know her as one of the most popular adult film actresses ever. Since then, she's established herself as a very successful Twitch streamer. She's been an actress, a musician, a writer, and much more. Very creative person. In this episode, we talked her origin story, the struggles she faced in the adult industry, her journey to becoming an artist, and problematic views of sex in mainstream culture. So, as always, if you enjoyed this episode, you know what to do. Smash that like button on YouTube, leave us a comment with your favorite moments and learnings from this episode, and you can check out all related content at JustinCon.club. All right, please enjoy. How are you, Sasha? It's amazing to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you too. I'm doing all right.
Thanks for coming on this podcast.
Yeah.
I've been a fan of your story for so long. It's like I'm super stoked to talk to you.
Oh,
It's pretty cool.
awesome.
I have like everything I want to talk about, like your background and all the things that you've kind of done since your adult career. But then I love that you're a Twitch streamer now. Like, and
Yes,
we have to go into that. Like that's my
for
favorite.
sure.
That's my favorite thing ever. I feel like I get such a kick out of talking to people who are streaming on Twitch because it's changed. The platform has changed so much since we started. You know, and I feel like I learned more about it from talking to people than I kind of have known in the last whatever 5 years or 10 years.
Yeah, I can
Cool.
imagine.
Yeah, it's crazy to see how it's grown, and it's been like when we started off, I guess it was like 13, 14 years ago. It was this platform for everything, and nobody wanted to watch anything on it. It was so like small and nascent, and then we focused on video games and blew up, and then now like all the different categories are coming back. People are like just
Right,
fucking around and playing around on it, and it's pretty cool to see. It's like our vision realized finally.
right. That's crazy. So what made you realize like gaming was where it was at to
It
switch to that?
was my co-founder Emmett. The rest of us were very skeptical. My co-founder Emmett, who's still the CEO, was like, this was like in 2010, actually, at the end of 2010, so like 11 years ago. He's like, the content on our site sucks. It's all pirated sports, and
Oh, wow.
sometimes like just people like it's kind of like just chatting content. Actually, there was a lot of people who were just
Yeah.
talking to the camera, and he hated all of it. And so he was like, the only content on our site that I like is video games, is just watching people play video games, because StarCraft 2 had just come out. He was like a big StarCraft nerd. So he's like,
Wow.
I want to watch StarCraft, and we should just double down on this. And I was kind of in the middle on it. And then my other two co-founders, Michael and Kyle, were like, no, that's not going to be a thing. It's like they didn't like video games. They didn't play them. They thought it was stupid. And
Wow.
we couldn't agree. And so we ended up working on what became Twitch, like the gaming category on Justin TV, and then also worked on
Yeah.
this other mobile app. And the Twitch is the thing that kind of grew. And so eventually we were like, okay, we couldn't refuse that, like the evidence that it was growing, right?
Yeah.
So we just decided to go all in on that.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
unreal.
How did you find out about it?
Well, I want to, dude. So I don't know if it was when it was just in TV, but now that you're saying all this stuff about the different categories, I think it might have been something else like Xfire or something. I don't know. There was another platform in like 2007, 8 that I initially wanted to join and play games on, but it was such a bad toxic environment and girls were getting death threats. And I was like, I'm coming from the adult industry where like I've had enough problems with my own personal safety and things like this that I don't need to like jump into something else. So I've kind of always followed these different platforms that tend to sprout up and then just kind of kept an eye on it. And then when it was became Twitch, I was like, oh, like this looks familiar. What is this thing? And I would lurk. I was definitely a lurker
Yeah.
and just would watch people and saw this whole world explode. It was fascinating.
And how did you decide to start streaming? Like when did you do your first broadcast?
So when I finally decided to do it after going against it, I did it. I started 2019. So
Yeah.
like February 2019, something like this. And I said, okay, I'm gonna try it finally. I'm gonna do this. And I wanted to just play video games. And I'd been speaking to other people that are more on the marketing side of esports. And I was like, yeah, this is probably a good time for me to finally try it out. And I started. I had no idea how I would like it, even because of the concept of speaking to people that don't speak back to you, I think was the hardest thing. Like I watched
Yeah.
people do it, but watching it isn't the same as doing it yourself. So yeah, I just started really slowly because I had no idea. I didn't know if this was something that I would be able to commit more time to. So started small, started slow, and then just continued to grow from there. Um, but yeah, it's been a trip.
What's your what's the best part and what's the worst part about streaming on Twitch?
I think the best part is all of the memes.
Yeah.
Just these inside jokes that you develop with your community are they're irreplaceable. You can't even find these things in real life sometimes. Like I think you could compare it to an inside joke that maybe you have with your best friend or your family, but in a different way. It's always in a very just at the root of it, it brings me back to being a kid, really.
Yeah.
Like just these really simple but funny things that we all know about and the rest of the world doesn't know about. I think that's really cool and that's really special. The worst
It's
part
kind of
is,
like, oh, sorry, I was just
yeah, go
gonna say
ahead.
it's kind of like you spend so much time with these people, like they spend so much
Yeah.
time with you that they like really know everything about, they've like they just you have those inside jokes and like that shared experience.
Yeah, totally. And then I love just being able to play games and like hang out with people and being able to do that because that's something that as you get older, you have less and less time to do. So it's like, yeah, now I can do this and actually stream it and you can make a living. It's an unreal concept that it's come so far. I mean, I guess the worst part is probably just having to, excuse me. The worst part is probably having to follow all of these rules that are so out of your control because you
Yeah.
can't control what other people say and people will come into your chat. They will try to trigger you, which I'm pretty good at not getting triggered, just because I've heard it all and I've seen it all. Uh, um, but it's more so this concept that, Twitch makes you as a streamer responsible for what happens in your chat. So
Yeah.
that means even if it's in another language. So that can be really difficult because, especially for somebody like me, I have a very large international fan base and people want to be able to communicate to each other in chat, not just with me in their language. So for a while, I also have like international mods. So for a while, they would mod in different languages. And finally, I was like, this is just too much. And it took away from sort of that interaction between me and the mods and the community. So
Yeah.
now it's like English only, and you have to enforce all of these things, and you can't say simp, but you can if you are talking about the concept of simp. So all of these things that are so out of your control as a streamer, that is kind of tiresome for sure.
Wait, Twitch,
And it's,
I think I heard that. Twitch banned simp. You can't say simp anymore.
you can't say simp, but let's say we're having a conversation like this right now, you can say it because you're talking about it. You're not using it in an offensive way, right? But then people they get fixated on these rules and then they think like, well, I can never say it, which isn't
Yeah.
quite true, right? It's always about context. It's how you use the word. Um,
I don't envy Twitch and like the team there at all in terms of the moderation side. It's such a nightmare
oh yeah, it is.
because you're
It
like
is.
kind of banned if you're screwed if you do and screwed if you don't. Like
Exactly.
the even back in the day, we had so many horrible problems with moderation. Because I mean, there's people who are just, I mean, like the worst people exist on the internet
Yeah.
saying
Yep.
toxic shit. And we would always, like, even when we started off just with my stream, like doing my live stream on the internet 2007, like people would come in and say like horrible shit, and then other
Yeah.
people would screenshot it and put it on blogs and be like, this is the audience of Justin TV. It's like the worst, the
Right.
worst people.
Right.
And we had like no moderation then we added like various forms of like reporting functions and stuff like that, but people, like, it still didn't, it was all community driven, right? And so we had like this horrible stuff happen on the site, like even in the
Yeah.
early days, like someone committed suicide live on our site.
Yeah.
And people were like, oh, this is their fault. We're like, we have literally no way we could control them. It was like 3 a.m in the
Yeah.
morning. So we've had, yeah, there's it's just such a hard problem. And now, like, I was given a
It is.
talk on like, and then yeah, it's always evolving, right? Like, I was talking to, we did like a 10-year anniversary talk at, like, to Twitch, like internally, with the founders who have all, most of the founders have left except my co-founder Emmett. And I'm like, you guys should ban the gambling streams, like everyone's all like playing on these casinos or
Wow.
whatever, which I think
Yeah.
is like horrible. And then Emmett's like,
No, no.
dude, like, you're like, you don't have any context for like what's happening. And I'm like, you're right. Like, I should just shut up. And
Wow.
like, you guys, it's like such a hard job to figure out like what should be
It
allowed and
is.
what shouldn't be, and like
Yeah.
there's
It's
always someone who's
actually
going to find fault with it.
for sure. Yeah. And that's actually one of the things that like 11 years ago now prevented me from wanting more than 11 years ago prevented me from wanting to stream, is because I saw all this stuff and I was like, I don't, as, let's say, as tough as I might be, being able to hear the same crap over and over, like after a while, that's going to eat at anybody. Nobody can
Yeah.
take seeing the worst things thrown at you day after day. It's just not psychologically healthy. But as I started to see all of these tools become available, that was more interesting to me, because you can really foster the community that you want with the help
Yeah.
of your moderators. And that's great.
Yeah, it has. I mean, to the props to the team, because I feel like the community has evolved to be like way better, way more
Yeah.
mainstream, way more positive, over time, and that's been really cool
Yeah.
to watch. And so, how much are you streaming now? Are you making a living on it, or
I
is it
stream like
a hobby?
5 days a week right now.
Okay, so a lot.
So a lot. It's, speaking from a real business perspective, it's not where I would like it to be, but I think it can still grow. Yeah, 5 days a week. I think I was lucky in that I was streaming before the pandemic.
Yeah.
So, I also DJ, and like the moment the pandemic hit, I just saw all, friends or friends of friends and musicians that had nowhere to go and nowhere to be, and everybody started live streaming. And I can't tell you how many people hit me up for advice on how to get started. And
Like, go back a year
looking
and
back on
start.
that, yeah, looking back on that, I'm just really fortunate that I started when I did. But I do think it can still grow. I would like for it to grow. It's kind of nice not having to tour. It's nice
It's
to be able to be at home.
DJing gets old, then like touring gets old, and like being able to play video games from the comfort of your own house as a job is the is the dream.
Like, let's say that touring as a woman is really difficult.
Why is that?
It's there's things that consistently happen to you. And this is apart from me being me and my history in adult films. Like, just being a woman on the road is incredibly challenging, whether it has to do with working with sleazy promoters, or, and that can be in terms of sexual harassment, or it can be in terms of not providing you with the basic setup to be able to perform in your show. And then there's just all these other components that go into it. Like, of course, you have your appearance. You have to look a certain way. Your fans are there. The people are expecting something. So traveling, not sleeping because you leave a club at 5 a.m. and then get on the flight at 7 a.m. And, after a while, it starts to take a toll on you. And I like my sleep. So, but I think the most challenging thing is just like these unknowns of really just how slimy the the touring life can be and people trying to take advantage of you. It gets tiring. I
Was
love
it?
being on stage, but
Yeah.
but that part of it is not something that I look forward to going back to.
Do you think you'll go back?
I don't know. I've been thinking about that a lot. I've been talking to a lot of friends. Right now, I'm absolutely not ready because of the pandemic, and I'm vaccinated. I encourage everybody to please get vaccinated as long as your doctor says it's okay. But I am still not ready. We're seeing spikes already after the Euro Cup, which was 1 week ago. And I've known people that are vaccinated that have still got COVID because the number of unvaccinated people continue to make this thing spread. And I'm just not ready. I'm not ready to go into big public spaces, absolutely not. So I have no idea what the next 3 months hold, what the next 6 months hold in terms of people around the world being able to get vaccinated. So right now
You're
I don't want to
safe
say
at
I'm
home.
comfortable, but I feel safer. Definitely. Yeah. Yeah.
Amazing. And, I mean, it's pretty cool to hear that how Twitch has enabled people to make a living through the pandemic. It's
Yeah.
really that's pretty meaningful to me. I think that's one of the things that Emmett I know is always like one of the most proud things he's most proud of. Is how many people are able to make a living on Twitch.
Yeah.
I remember back when we started, he was interviewing people. But this is like right when we started sharing revenue and figuring out how to get people paid. And had always thought it was like kind of an insurmountable goal. Like we weren't making barely any money in the company as it is. So it was like, how could we pay out any meaningful amount to people? And then one of the pieces of feedback that the gamers gave, which is why we started focusing on gaming, was like, they were like, if we could just make $50 a month, that would be meaningful. There were people who were,
Wow.
yeah, they were like, their bar was so low for like what a meaningful rev share would be. And
Whoa.
we were like, oh, $50, because we had tried to buy some sports content, and like
Oh,
even the
okay.
worst sports content was like $50,000 an event. Like a surfing contest would be like 50,000,
Wow.
and we were like, there's no way we could ever make enough money to even pay that back. So it makes
Yeah.
no sense. And then gamers came on, and the bar was like way lower to start. Now people are making obviously a lot more than that, but
Yeah.
that was kind of what got us encouraged that we could generate meaningful revenue for people. And then now it's like, I don't even know how many people make money on Twitch, but I think there were like tens of thousands of people who are making like their living on Twitch.
Yeah. I mean, it's a global platform.
Yeah. So okay, one question that came up for me just now is like, how does the music industry compare with the adult industry? Then is one like sleazier than the other?
I, dude, that's so hard to say. If I try to really compartmentalize these things, I could say that there's definitely more sexual harassment in the music industry than there is in the adult industry. Simply because people are more open-minded. I think that there's this sort of unspoken understanding between people, especially because let's say we'd always say the word civilians. With civilians, they don't understand us. So there's this sort of unspoken code, and it's very rare that it happens, at least in my experience. I think where they're most similar is the monetary side of things, like the business side of things, is when people can start to take advantage in both industries. Where if you start to demand your worth, then they more or less try to gaslight you,
Yeah,
like try to
they're
push
like
you
trying to
down. And
they're trying to figure out situations where they can take advantage of you and like make as much off of you as possible.
definitely, yeah, I think that's where they're the most similar. Um, yeah, it's interesting thinking back on it too. Which one is more of a grind? Also difficult to answer. Because with adult, it's like it's very easy to be respected within the industry. You show up on
Yeah,
time, you're professional, those things go a long way. Whereas it moves so fast, the output is just so fast and continuous. Whereas music has time and schedule and season and deadlines that you have to do this by this date and to get out on this date to get out for this festival. And that's something I always hated. And so I really pushed against that for a long time, and maybe to my disadvantage at certain points in my life. But at other times I'm glad like I didn't answer to those demands.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want to. Again, I don't know if that was like necessarily the best thing, but I'm still glad I chose that path.
Oh, there's so much I want to ask. I love this.
Yeah.
Can we zoom all the way back actually, and just can you tell me the Sasha Grey origin story, like how you got started, and I mean how you decided to make a go at the adult industry, and like in the beginning, because you started really young, right?
Yeah. So I was in, let's see, I started like looking into the industry about 6 months before I moved to LA. So I was like 17. I was already out of high school. I graduated high school a year early. And I had recently sort of discovered this side of myself, sexually speaking, that I wanted to tap into more. And, you know, I grew up with a very Catholic mother and a father who told me like the hard, cold truth about the world. So it was a very confusing thing to deal with when like your dad is telling you this is what people want and people go after what they want. And my mom won't even talk to me about sex, you know?
Yeah.
So it's very difficult. But then, and of course I was like the last of my friends to lose their virginity. I was very shy when it came to my sexuality. I wasn't confident in it at all. And I had started to experiment a little bit finally, and I started to open up, and it sounds cliche, but it was almost like a light bulb went off in my head. And I was like, I want to try all of this stuff and I want to explore these fantasies, but I don't know how, or I don't know where to go. And Craigslist was huge at the time, where people would go and meet there. And I'm way too paranoid. I wasn't going to go and meet people off the internet that I had no way of knowing who they were. I don't want to say like Sacramento is a small town necessarily. That's where I'm from, but it's also not a big city where you can find alternative lifestyle events. Maybe that's,
Yeah.
you know, it's probably changed now. I don't live there anymore, but, you know, like I would go to San Francisco on the weekends, and it's just like a town I always idolized. And I grew up going there on like day trips with my family and stuff. And then starting to go as like a young adult, seeing all of these things and wanting to be a part of that. And so I thought about porn, and I said, well, this is a place where I can explore these fantasies in a safe and contained environment. So I just started making lists of like what I would read online, right? Like, this company is bad to work for. Okay, don't work for this company. And just going down this list. But there's still so much that you can't find online, because you know, people in the industry are very protective of it as well. So after about 6 months, I waited until I turned 18. I got some photos taken and I sent them out to different agents. And I had a few people straight up tell me like, you don't really have the look. You don't really have the look. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
And I came to LA for a week with the hopes of meeting people. Wasn't able to meet anybody. And then I had written this mission statement that I had sent to all of these different agencies. And I'm on my way back. I'm leaving LA, driving back to Sacramento, and I get a call
Wait,
from
what was
this
the
guy.
mission
Like,
statement?
it was like, God, I know I have it somewhere, not on this PC, but I like, if I called my old agent, my first agent, he would read it to you right now. Like he is like so proud of it. He has it saved. He's actually reads it to people, but it was more or less saying like, I want to explore all of my fantasies and be able to encourage other people to do the same and not feel guilty about it.
Yeah.
And also being, you know, willing and able to understand that it's a commodity, that I myself was a commodity, but I'm also willing to explore my fantasies in that process. So yeah, on the way home, my agent, well, who became my agent later, he gives me a call. He's like, hey, these are really your pictures. You know, and he has like this hilarious voice. It's like, yeah, you really have your own car? Yeah. Well, you have a phone, obviously. So if you're really this cute and you have your own car and your own phone, you're gonna do fine. What? Okay. And so we talked a little bit, and then and I told him I'd be coming back, and I packed up my stuff and I moved into like a pool house in North Hollywood. Um, and and then I met him like the first week I was in LA, and then I think I shot my first scene like the week I moved to LA.
Oh wow! So
It happened really
quickly.
fast. Yeah, like so I met his name is Mark. I met him. Um, and then he took me on, they call it ghosties. It's like similar to what actual models do. You go meet different not agents, sorry, go to different production companies and meet different directors and go on sets. So I was like sort of able to see the sets and what they look like, which the majority of them were just houses, you know, people shooting in houses in
Yeah.
the valley. And I remember this one office I walked, it was an office, not a set. We walked in this office, and the guy said, I think it was the owner of the company, was like, let me guess, she doesn't speak a word of English. Huh? What are you talking about? He's like, oh, I'm so sorry. You didn't look, you don't look American. And I was like, okay, sure, buddy. Um, so yeah, that's how it started. And then my first scene, it happened because a girl actually wasn't able to perform. She had to cancel last minute, and they needed a replacement. And I got booked for the gig. And within a week or so, I was shooting my first scene. Week to 2 weeks, I was shooting my first scene.
So I think I remember, maybe I read this somewhere, that you're pretty strategic about how you approach your career, right? Like, can you tell me a little bit about that?
I have to say part of it was to protect myself, you know, to protect my mind and my body, to not fall into these traps that um, from the outside people think exist within the adult industry, all of the cliches, you know, wanting to stay healthy and not like leave a good example, really change the I
Yeah.
wanted to change the perception of what people had in the industry. And you know, in terms of the way people act and the way people think and the way they speak, the way they look. And you know, I've met women from the industry who they would speak like this when they were on camera, and then the camera would turn off, and then they would be speaking normal. And that concept of playing this ditz was, you know, but it is still a concept and it still works. So that's
Yeah.
fascinating to me. But I wanted to challenge these stereotypes because I think for so long, and I think it still exists. I think for so long, you know, women haven't been able to be sexual and have a mind.
Yeah.
Um, and I think if you look on social media, it appears those things are changing, but in reality, I think we're still scratching the surface when it comes to empowering women to be able to have their cake and eat it too.
And was the industry, did it turn out to be a place where you could safely explore your sexuality, or did that
Oh,
goal?
hell yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. I think the first 3 months especially are so, they were so intense and they were so fun and everything is so new. Um, but for sure, things especially like BDSM, which is something again, like going back to before I got in the industry, wanting to explore these fantasies further. You know, I was able to do it in a place where like I felt safe that if somebody was going to tie me up, I wasn't going to be left somewhere. That there were other people around, and also just in terms of like your physical safety, right? Like I know these people know what they're doing, and so I can trust that. And, you know, you sit down and there's a list of rules and you literally go down the checklist of like, this is what I'm okay with and this is what I'm not okay with. And that actually, you know, the BDSM community actually taught me a lot about like how to approach normal scenes, vanilla scenes as well. Um, and how to, you know, how to communicate with your fellow performers to
Yeah.
make sure that everybody is comfortable and safe. Because I talked a lot of shit. You know, there's some people that can't handle shit talking. It psychologically affects them. So being able to go into a scene and be like, "Are you okay with this?" Yes, it teaches you a lot, and I think it gave me a lot of confidence in how to carry myself and how to not take any shit. For sure, yeah, yeah. By exploring those fantasies, yeah, 100%. Like sometimes it's like, give me that dungeon back. I want that gear. Yeah, having access to that was really special.
And like, so when did it? At a certain point, did it wear off, and you were like, okay, I want to quit, or I want to do something else? Like, how did you decide to leave? How long did you perform for?
3 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think after, let's say, like after the first year, it's sort of the honeymoon phase is over, right?
Yeah.
And it's still exciting, but you just know too much. So it's sort of like your own fantasy has been killed. Um,
Like, what do
but
you
I
what do
have
you
to,
mean? What do you know?
like, you know, sex is ugly. Sex is dirty. It's and there are people that you know, they put together very polished porn, and there are people that not. I did not do a lot of polished things. So you see the backside of stuff, like, you know, the guy trying to keep it up, the girl who's 3 hours late, and, you know, unfortunately cliches exist for a reason. The girl who's 3 hours late and can't keep her eyes open because she's on something, right? Like these things, you start to question sort of what's happening around you. But I think the most disappointing thing was seeing other people not care about what they were doing. Because when I decide to
No.
go after something, I'm very passionate and dedicated. Like if I want to do something, I want to do it fully and put everything into it. And so to see people like checking their watch would fucking disappoint me.
Yeah.
Like, you know, make this the best thing you can make it. Don't just 1, 2, 3 done, you know, same 4 positions and you're done. So that stuff would really piss me off. And that's sort of for me when it became a little bit disappointing. And then just again, like I set out with specific goals in mind of things I wanted to challenge, and also just like change the way things are done and filmed so they're different and so they're fresh and new. So I started to invest time into starting up my own production company, and let's say took a year of building, and then within 3 months it was done. And that's
Building like was it an
like
adult
starting
production
it
company
up.
or normal
Yeah.
like
Yeah,
normal
no, it was an adult production company.
Yeah.
Yeah, adult production company. And uh yeah, I poured all of my time into it, sleeping 3 hours a night, coming up with concepts and ideas. And unfortunately, I just started it with the wrong person, and it failed immediately. And that person, I believe, never respected me as a business partner and as an equal. So around that time, let's see, this was 2009. I had I had already filmed and was promoting the Girlfriend Experience, which I did with Steven Soderbergh.
Yeah.
And so I spent several months just doing press, which was this whole other new world for me. And people in my own industry thought I retired. You know, and I was just like, what the heck? Just stop assuming things. And so during that period, I was doing press and starting up, building my own production company, essentially at the same time. And then slowly I stopped performing for other people because I wanted to only perform for myself at that point. And built up this company, did not do well. The partnership ended poorly. And let's see, that was the end of 2009. And I was like, well, I feel like I accomplished what I wanted to accomplish as a performer. I don't feel like I can go back working for other people because I don't feel like I'm getting my worth either.
Yeah.
So then I just I didn't even make an announcement or anything. I just stopped performing for other people and I started focusing more on my music, and um and that was that, really. It wasn't like a drama or a big deal. It was just, it was.
Just kind of faded out for you.
Yeah,
Do you
definitely.
think that
Because
if there sorry, go ahead.
it's like, after a year of building up a company, like, what do? I go start this again. Oh, and the other thing was like they started doing a lot of parodies in the industry, and I was like, I can't, I can't get
Don't want
down
to
with
do
that.
it.
It's so
Yeah, like
it's stupid.
that was like the
It's not
Pirates of the
interesting.
Caribbean porn video or something, stuff like that.
I was in one of those. One of those was that was one of the better ones, at least, but because it was a high production. The others were like high school theater level of production.
Do you think if something like OnlyFans was around today, like you would have kept going, where it's like more owned, or like, okay, I guess you don't rate OnlyFans.
that that's so hard to. I feel like of course I would, because you have the ability with that platform to create your own content, right?
Yeah,
But yeah, that has exploded completely. It's fascinating.
it's exploded like in a bad way. You
No,
mean where
I
it's
don't
like
think
gotten
so.
everywhere? Yeah,
Yeah, it's everywhere. It's crazy.
it seems just like a lot of people are, like have having their control of their own schedule, and I guess it has a lot of the
Yeah.
advantages that Twitch has, right? Where you just like do whatever you want and find your niche fan
Yep.
base, and then that supports you. And it seems like a lot of people, both amateurs and professionals, like prefer it to the way that things they used to be, I guess.
Yeah. Well, you have more, like you said, control of your schedule and your time, but you also, I think people are making much more money than they ever made performing for other people on that platform. I think the discoverability, I don't want to talk shit about them, but I think there's a
It's
lot like that could be done that's not being done. Let's say that much. But
yeah,
it works for people
yeah,
that definitely works for people that are established. And then, just like I even read a story recently about a woman from my hometown who's like a housewife she's not even having sex on camera. She's just posting photos in nice lingerie.
yeah. I've heard that too. Like friends of friends making 50 grand a month posting lingerie
Yeah.
photos of themselves, stuff like that.
Yep.
I have no idea. Yeah.
Crazy.
Okay, so tell me about like switching, because you've done like all of these different artistic pursuits post adult, right? Like you've been in well, obviously a DJ, but also like made videos, right, and films, and acted. I think you were in Entourage too, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
to, was it hard to break out of, do things beyond adult, or like was there a stigma that you had to get past? Yeah, tell
Oh,
me
for
about that.
sure. Yeah, definitely. So let's see, like between, let's say between like the time I stopped performing and then by the time I did Entourage, I was working on a photo book. So that was taking up a lot of my time. Um, I was working on that. I was DJing regularly, and then Entourage happened. And then as a result of that, that sort of brought more attention to the music side of things, which was great because it allowed me to continue to pursue that. Um, but then, for a while, having different agents send you out on auditions for like a role that's just a titty role. How does that help me? How does that challenge me? So I guess I could say that I never really found probably like the right support of people that really believe me to push me for things outside of the box. Definitely. Or just meeting people that, I they would actually tell me to my face, like, oh, I didn't think you would be this way. So
Yeah.
I found that like getting in a room with people was much more advantageous for me than like an agent that works at a huge company sending out an email on my behalf. They really don't have the same effect. But yeah, definitely challenging. Um, again, I've mentioned this before, but similar to the music industry, there are things about the entertainment and let's say mainstream entertainment industry that are much sleazier than porn by far. So yeah, definitely a lot of challenges, but that's why I've always not sort of, that's why I've always tried to keep busy doing my own thing and be self-sustaining, really, to sort of avoid falling into those pitfalls or not having anything at the end of the day. And then I started, well, I've been writing for a long time, but I published my first novel in 2013. And then
Yeah.
that was really nice because that just, I could control my story completely on my time. Well, the first one, not so much because I had very strict deadlines, but, I can control the story, and that was really nice. And I really enjoyed that. And fast forward like 3 novels later, I was like, do I still want to do this? Do I still want to go out on auditions and having to put myself out in front of people? Not so much. I want more control than that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think you'll keep writing novels? Like you've done so many different creative pursuits. Like what's your favorite? Like what do you, how have you?
I would love to. I
Yeah.
really would love to. But being an independent creator is extremely challenging, whether or not you come from the adult industry. That's just, for me, has added an extra layer. But for sure, it's a constant challenge, and you don't have a cushion, right? So I would love to, but right now the publishing industry is not doing great. Everybody is moving to podcasts. That's all people care about. So it's
Yeah.
hard to say, yeah, I want to go write a novel, but how am I going to sustain myself? So that's always something that as an independent creator you have to think about. Unfortunately, like you don't have the luxury of something holding you up unless you've done well, then you're no longer an independent creator. I was going to say unless you've done extremely well, but then you have other people to answer to. So I
Yeah.
would really like to, yeah. That's something that I would love to be able to commit more time to, as well as photos. I was going to start a new photo project in 2020 and the COVID hit.
What kind of photos are you gonna do? Or like artistic photos,
Yeah,
like a
it's going
photo
to
book or
sound,
something.
well, I'll tell you how the concept started. We all get angry at social media, right?
Yeah.
We all can be frustrated at it. And I found myself getting too angry because I was seeing a lot of accounts they were accounts of male photographers shooting women. And let's say at least half of them were really bad photos. They weren't even good photos, but they were making careers out of this. And most of the photos were like were hypersexualized photos of hot women, right?
Yeah.
And I was just finding myself getting really angry at this. And I was like, this is not healthy. Like, I can't control that. Who gives a shit? Don't be angry at somebody you don't know. And sort of balance myself back. And I said, well, then I should change something. Why am I not the one doing this? So I just wanted to start shooting women, but really in a very stylized environment. I was looking at this book by this photographer, Carlo Molino, and just had he had this studio where like a boudoir almost, where he would shoot women, and there's a texture and a grit to it that I love, and I don't want to replicate that necessarily, but that's also sort of what inspired me in this process of like, yeah, let a woman do this now. So I still plan on doing that, but COVID.
So post-COVID, that's a goal. And you have a podcast too, right? With Dumbfounded?
Oh, no. Well, no, it was not a podcast. It was a show called Gray
Like a
Area.
video series. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's over.
So it was like a one
It's
season
over.
type of thing. Yeah.
it was with this excuse me, this startup, and they started 10 new shows, and I guess we were the best show, like the highest rated. But launching a startup in the middle of a pandemic is quite challenging. So yeah, they're not doing anything anymore, unfortunately. I think they're doing like really short content, and that's about it.
Oh, that's too bad.
It
I
was
watched
fun
one of
while it
them just now.
lasted.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Do you
What?
what
It was
episode
the
was
one with
it?
the first one with the meme queen. But one thing I quote I think I found about, like you said in the start, was like the number one thing that you've always encouraged people to is to live their lives in a healthy manner, and that really resonated with me. And I wonder, because that's one of the major themes of like my podcast and my story, is just the things that I found that have helped me live like in a much more healthy, open, conscious way. I'm curious, like, what's
Yeah.
your journey to that been?
I'm constantly working on it,
Yeah.
right? I was talking about it. I was talking about similar things with friends last night. Like, life is a constant balancing act. That's what life is about. You're constantly
Yeah.
balancing everything. And I think when I said that, you know, I believe that people can do extreme things but still do them in a healthy way. And I think that's very important. I think you should be able to go after what you want, but also be very aware of how you're approaching that, and don't fall into any pitfalls on your journey. So I think for me, a lot of that has just been personally having a certain level of mental strength to help me keep going, um, especially with the challenges that life throws at you.
And how do you protect that mental strength, or maintain it?
I don't trust people.
It's very healthy.
I think that's how it started for sure.
Yeah.
I think now I'm reflecting differently because of the pandemic, and realizing that even though I might be comfortable in isolation, it's not the healthiest thing either, because humans are social creatures. And so, pushing myself to see people and do things. I'm still safe in my approach, still cautious. But I think doing things that sometimes also might make you uncomfortable are also important to do, to continue to challenge yourself. I don't like complacency. It makes me sad. So, and then more recently, in the past several years, just dealing with like loss and grief. All of these things they're a new layer of challenges that life throws at you, that like I thought I would be prepared for, that I was not at all, at all. And I don't think there's one answer, one solution for any person, but I could say, like, I wish we had a different relationship with death in Western culture. I'm totally veering off the question, I think, but um, I think being able to stay strong and also know when to be vulnerable in life is really important to finding that balance and understanding yourself, because it's hard, man.
Yeah. I used to have a really tough time with vulnerability and being able to just show any vulnerability. Like, the startup culture
Yeah,
is all about always winning, and like how well you're doing, and representing that you're like, you know, doing amazingly, even when you
yeah,
don't feel that way, which is most of the time. And
right.
but when I found, over the 15 years into my career or whatever, I've kind of realized, like, oh, actually, it's okay to be vulnerable, and people actually respect you more when you
Yeah,
show some vulnerability. And it really changed my perspective on things, and I felt much closer to the people around me after I shifted my attitude.
yeah, that's great. It's Yeah, life's a trip. I think it's different too when you're this new age of social media is much more positive than it was even 6, 7 years ago.
Yeah.
Um, but sometimes I've had so many bad experiences with my personal safety that, like, I'm so cautious with what I say when it comes to those layers of vulnerability, which is interesting because when I became, let's say, a public figure, like you weren't allowed to have boundaries.
Yeah.
Fuck your boundaries. No one gave a shit. And now you see people starting to, not always, of course, but you do see people starting to respect people's boundaries. And that's fascinating to me. So it's interesting to be able to like go live and just say, you know, I'm not doing great. I don't want to talk about it though. Or somebody in my life passed, but I don't want to tell you who. These sorts of things are really interesting. Whereas before, I feel like people would, if that's the case, then don't bring it up. Was sort of the approach.
Yeah. Yeah, I think maybe it's the change has been more and more people have kind of grown up on the internet and like lived this like whole part of their lives there where, they kind of, they brought more of the whole aspects of being a human being to the being online.
Right.
Versus before it was kind of just like everyone would just, it was pure id, and they were just spewing out whatever they thought at all times. So there's no control or boundaries or like, treating people like a human being on the internet. It's like a total free for all. Yeah.
For sure.
Well, we're at the hour, so I want to wrap up. But maybe one final question is just like, what's next for you? Are you doubling down on Twitch, or
yeah, totally. It's been a ride, man. I've had a lot of fun. I do this thing called Secret Sauce on my channel where I cook. So that's been fun too, being able to explore that part of my creativity because I love cooking and people have really responded to that. And then, trying to push YouTube a little bit more too on just the uploads and doing special edits just for that from my streams onto YouTube. And then I'll be taking off for the summer doing IRL content if people don't go back on lockdown. Like, awesome. Why I'm looking at the news every day. So yeah.
That's so cool. I'll check out the cooking streams. I love to cook as well.
Cool.
Something. Yeah.
Maybe we could do a cook-off or something sometime.
Oh, we should do that. That would be awesome. Like a live cook-off. I don't know how we compare it, but maybe it's like a presentation. There would be some like a plating.
Nice. Cool. All right. Well, it was great talking to you.
Yes. Sasha, thank you for coming on. Amazing.
Yeah, no problem. My pleasure.